A surprise podcast, Santi. I don't think it was like 8 hours ago that you and I expected to be doing this together tonight, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Not on a regular day, but here we are. There are city news we have to talk about. So we're here to talk to you guys. Hopefully, some people can join us and looking forward to talking about the new coach.
Very excited. And it as it usually does, it happened pretty quick. We had a rumor end of last week. I want to say had it been Thursday, Friday, and a few rumors at that. It seemed like the fire hose started to spring a leak. And you had a couple names announced, maybe three names, I think, that had been announced, which we're going to get to the whole process, but three names that had been announced. And then it just all of a sudden the confirmation was fast on Friday, where, well, as much of a confirmation as you're going to get without it being official. So, I planned on doing this. I think it was either Sunday night or Monday night. I planned on doing, and I referred to it on social media as this fact-based pod, which was
Right.
talking to Phil. Feels like we need to wait until it's official to do something. And I'm like, I get it. Let's wait until it's official, but we got to get something. I mean, you're hitting Jeff Carlisle, you're getting Tom Bogert. I mean, it doesn't get any more official, like unofficially official than these guys. So once that, I was like, all right, I'll just put some notes together. We'll run this down. We'll give specifics on who Mellberg is, who some of the other guys are. Like, this is their coaching resume, not getting into necessarily like tactical formations or how they could line up folks or what their history. It's just facts. And then this happens, and suddenly today becomes, let's just go for it right before the holidays, right? So,
Right. It was a good surprise. Before those rumors last week, I was a little bit concerned that there had not been any news, and like I kind of knew at the time that Hackworth wasn't gonna be the guy because
yeah.
he would have been confirmed like a week or two after the season, but no news, and my concern was like, well, players report for preseason in January,
Yeah.
so we gotta get this going and have the coach announce, and hopefully he can get to the United States soon.
Honestly, I thought it was going to be next week at the early, and I kind of wondered if they were going to do Baumgartel and Melberg at the same time or back to back kind of things, because we're not going to do it on Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving. That's just not no fly zone when it comes to announcements. Like, there's no reason to do it on a holiday. But as typical for City, they kind of just got it out of the way, and so
I think they knew you were gonna do this podcast and say, okay, let's help the flyover footy guys out, give them some news so he can talk about the real thing instead of just talking about it without official confirmation. You know?
yeah, thanks, Lutz. Really appreciate you looking out for us on that one, and getting this, letting us do this, and have this be our big coaching announcement pod, breaking news before the holidays. I think that's kind of nice. And that was the other thing, is I wanted to get something out from us before the holidays, because big travel holiday. Figure, folks, if we have something worthwhile to listen to, that might be kind of cool. We've spent this off season not doing pods, not kind of filling things in with, like, we had the Soccer in the Lou episode that we did, Phil and I, with Brendan Weesey, and I think there were 2 or 3 total end of season type off season previews, end of season. So stretching things out as we can, but definitely giving ourselves a little bit of a break and not scraping the bottom of the barrel for content, so to speak. I'd like us to have meaningful things to talk about instead of just speculating for days, even though I kind of just feel like every once in a while jumping on to do that, because
Yeah, and
you get the itch, right?
yeah, but it's nice. It's nice to get a break. I was thinking today, and it feels like it's been forever. I know you guys did some stuff, but I think my last time was after the end of the season when we did flyover fallout after the Minnesota game. So more than a month.
I haven't done a pod with you since before my European vacation.
Ah, true, because you
Mm,
were out of town.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
out of town for like 2 weeks there. And so I mean, it might have been almost 2 months since you and I have gotten together,
yeah,
which is
probably.
ridiculous. But we're back, and we have not even started recording. If you joined us on the live stream, we have not even started the pod yet. So thank you for joining us, for just kind of chit chatting before we get started into the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. Which, if you're not sure why we're podding tonight, then you might have been asleep for the entire day. But we have some really exciting news to talk about tonight.
Wait,
So
there are some city news.
Some small. And it's arguable, apparently, on how much of an impact this City news will have to the on the field performance of City. And that's definitely something that we're going to touch on a little bit tonight. There's only so much you could go into when the season itself is 3 months away. But this was definitely a huge milestone day for St. Louis City, that's for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about it.
All right, let's get this kick started, Santi.
Let's do it.
Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy, presented by Noble Ice Vineyards. My name is Matt Baker, joined by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for a big day in the history of St. Louis City. We have some breaking news as of the recording of this pod. We're coming at you live on a stream Tuesday night. We might be in your ears Wednesday, Thursday as you're traveling for Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for joining us, however you're tuning in. And if you've missed it, then let me be the first one to break the news. St. Louis City SC has a new head coach. The second ever official head coach in club history is Olof Mellberg, a 47-year-old Swede, current manager, or at least former manager as of December 1st when his contract expires, of, and I'm going to butcher this a few times tonight, IF Brahmapukarna. I'm just going to call him Brahma, I think, for the rest of the pod.
You're gonna be in charge of that because I'll probably be worse than you.
Brahmapukarna. The more I see it, the more I read it, I'm going to get it right. Anyway, Olof Mellberg, 47-year-old Swede who has a history of coaching in the Swedish First Division League mostly. Currently just finished up a season with Brahma in the Swedish First Division, the Allsvenskan. Also a former Swedish national team defender, captain of their national team. He's been to a couple World Cups. This was announced officially by St. Louis City on Tuesday, and they billed him as Aston Villa legend and previous Swedish national team captain Olof Mellberg. He has been named St. Louis City's St. Louis City SC's second ever head coach. He has been to St. Louis. He's taken the pictures. The images are all over social media. He brings 5+ years of Scandinavian head coach experience to St. Louis City. And Mellberg was quoted from St. Louis in the press release article today saying, I am excited to join St. Louis as the head coach. It is a great opportunity here because of the amazing infrastructure and the direction that the organization has put in place. I can't wait to build upon the foundation already set here and the massive fan support that gives this team the energy to be successful. Santi, before we go into who reported this first, how this sequence of events occurred, and we're going to talk a lot about the process, the credentials that Mellberg brings to this team. What are your initial thoughts as you're still digesting this announcement of our new head coach?
Yeah, so when I started seeing the rumors last week, I was like, who is this? And I didn't know what to think. At least on the personal side, I was thinking, oh, the team is going to get a coach with MLS experience, maybe somebody that has won championships or has gotten to finals or has done well in the playoffs. And then when Jim Curtin was announced as leaving Philadelphia Union, I was like, this may be the guy.
Yeah.
I hope St. Louis City goes for it and at least try to make an offer and get him. But at the same time, I was thinking, I will not be surprised if it is a German coach or an European coach. And here we are. And yeah, like he on the surface, like the recent results, you will think, well, it's nothing flashy, but then you did a lot of digging on what he has done and the roster he had and how much money they spent on players, and he did very decent for what he had, and so I like that, especially thinking now. I'm thinking, okay, City may not spend a bunch of money on a coach, which maybe could be good for the transfer window because you may have some extra money that you can spend on players. Because I don't think you can like go for it and spend a bunch of money on both a coach and a player. So I think it's a decent hire. If City brings a couple more players, and we have talked about a center back, and hopefully a speedy player that maybe will complement the current roster. if you have good players around a coach that has experience, maybe he will have good results. And he did well with lower division teams,
Mhm.
and got promoted a couple of times. So I think you have to give it time and respect the process. But just looking at the background and what he has done, yeah, I think he could be a good addition. Just give it time.
The one thing the press release was light on were details about Mellberg. And we had rumors and reporting from Manuel Veth, our friend over at Transfermarkt, that this is reportedly a multi-year deal, though that hasn't been publicly disclosed. We don't know the full length of the contract yet. It can be assumed the multi-year deal. You know, you would give your coach a couple years to get going with this. And at one point, there was talk this over the weekend that one of the final negotiating points was about how many or if Mellberg would be bringing over assistants from his staff over at Brahma. And we have not yet had confirmation about assistant staff turnover, though if you've checked the city app recently, you'll notice Mellberg is listed as our head coach with the full complement of assistants, including Alex Langer, goalkeeping coach, uh, still there. So they have
Hmm.
either haven't updated the assistants or they've um, or all of our assistants are staying. You know, so that was reportedly one of the last few bits of negotiating is will Mellberg be able to bring some of his staff over? We'll wait and see on what shakes out because, like I said, I don't remember if it was the beginning of this pod or off before we started recording, but the season's still 3 months away. You know,
Yeah.
there's training camp doesn't open until the first week of January. There's a lot of time that those kinds of things can shake themselves out. So the full staff will see how that turns out. But one thing that we don't have to worry about is a technical director. Because the other bit of news that City announced is that former interim head coach, current technical director of St. Louis City SC, John Hackworth, is confirmed to be remaining on staff in the front office as the technical director of St. Louis City SC. It was also reported that he'll hang on as an assistant coach, so we'll have to wait and see what his role on the sidelines might be, but
Hmm.
he will return to his technical director role. And this seems like one of the biggest things that St. Louis City fans are excited about seeing because he's a known quantity, right? Melberg has a lot of unknowns that we're going to get to on how people should set expectations for him. But Hackworth, I think fans had fallen in love with John Hackworth as a person. You know, he's very personable. He's very honest, very forthright in his feelings. He wears his heart and his emotions on his sleeve. And for him to choose to remain in the technical director role with St. Louis, a club and an organization that he's really helped build right alongside Lutz, when he could have probably gone and got himself a head coaching job somewhere else. There's still some vacancies in MLS. He could have gone probably back to U.S. soccer in some fashion. He probably would have had some opportunities abroad in other leagues, maybe gone back to, I mean, the opportunities were probably there for Hackworth. I feel he did a good enough job in this round, in this stint as an interim coach, that he probably garnered some attention. And so, knowing his passion for the sidelines and coaching and being that guy in charge of players, knowing that he's been willing to stay on in St. Louis as the technical director, that says a lot about, I think, his passion for St. Louis, about his passion for the club, and just what he thinks is possible here.
Yeah, yeah, and for sure he likes St. Louis as a place to live. So glad he's staying, and he has done great things with the club. He was the coach for City Two and helped putting together the roster. And you have to also note that during year one he was Bradley Carnell's assistant coach.
Mhm.
So you also have to give him credit for that, and it'll be exciting to see what his role will be on the sidelines, because you mentioned he will stay as an assistant.
Santi, do you want to talk before we get into Melberg and his history? Do you want to talk about this process for a little bit? Because I think this is the moment where a lot of the talk about Melberg is going to be mostly about his resume and what he brings. But I think it's worth looking at who was in that finalist category to give some perspective for what Lutz was really looking for in this head coaching position. So I don't want to say that I took this all from Manuel Veth, though I feel we did have overlapping information in sources. But I also have some sources in this one, and my sources were saying that in fact there were 4 finalists for the job. John Hackworth was not one of those 4 finalists, as best I know. He was just outside. You could call him a fifth. The biggest differentiating factor for Hackworth was that he knows MLS, he knows the players, he has that familiarity locally. So the other four were international coaches. And I'm told by this credible source that Melberg was always at the top of this list. The way it was described to me is that the list was, it started with, you think of a wide ranging net, right? You have your database, you put in a broad keyword, you get thousands of search responses. You start with thousands, and then you whittle it down, thousands, a few hundreds, hundred, a few dozen, and then it comes down. Melberg always being near the top of that list. And I think part of this comes from the fact that Lutz played against Mellberg. He understood his eye for the game, the history that Mellberg has with the Swedish national team, with the high level players that he had, and then his transition to coaching, what his resume that we'll talk about soon proved. So Mellberg being near the top of that list the entire time. A few other names that we heard about were Eirik Horneland, current manager of Braun in the Eliteserien, the Norwegian First Division. There was an assistant manager from FC Copenhagen, I believe, who is among those finalists, and former St. Gallen, RB Salzburg, and Bochum coach Peter Zeidler. Take that list and make with it what you will. If you want to look up those names, three of them I know. The other one, it's not for sure. However, all four of them were international. That much I do know. And so it was really, I take this and I think back to what Lutz had said on the City Voice about this not being an experiment, about needing to win, needing kind of a proven coach who he trusts and knows, and that he has seen enough body of work that he doesn't feel like this is going to be that big test where Bradley Carnell, first-time head coach, you're giving him an opportunity with a new team. This was, when I heard that City Voice, this wasn't that. This was, you're going to find a known commodity, a known person who, with a track record that you trust, that you believe in, that you know can lead this team. Now, the track record is interesting, but looking at these other finalists, you can't really say that any of them were flashy names or even household names, especially in America. And knowing that Hackworth was, as it was described to me, just outside of the top four, that tells me that there were certain qualities that really aren't at play locally that Lutz wanted to bring into this locker room. And I can't help but wonder if this is directly related to some of the issues the players were describing to us throughout this season, especially at the end. I think Klaus was incredibly forward by calling out the training, calling out the amount of weights that they lift. And we know the injuries that occurred during training just as much as on the field this season. So I think there's an eye towards that as well, where there really was a penchant to look outside of MLS when it comes to almost pretty much every single one of these finalists.
Yeah, that's a good point about the training and what the new coach could bring. But just thinking about the process, you mentioned there were four finalists, all from international soccer. And you think about it, the rumors are started with Hackworth and Danny Cruz, and then it just took a turn to an international coach search. And that's what I was thinking. Maybe neither Hackworth nor Danny Cruz, but maybe an assistant coach from an MLS team that is still in playoffs, or when
Right.
Jim Corning became available, that came to mind. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what intangibles he brings, and how he can manage a good group of players that St. Louis City has, and maybe two, three, four, who knows how many new players will come. But just from his resume and what he has done with limited budgets, and I also like his experience as a player.
Yeah.
He played for Aston Villa for a long time, and just also his experience with the Swedish national team. I think that's also a plus.
And the last thing I want to add on the search is, by having a finalist group that is all international, we are precluding some of the most popular name that has been discussed with St. Louis City fans over the past couple of weeks, which is Jim Curtin. You know, I did a little feature on him and what he could bring to St. Louis a few weeks ago on Flyover, but it doesn't sound like that was ever a finalist opportunity for St. Louis City. Now, whether or not they actually engaged and interacted with him, I don't know, but he was never in that that final group of candidates. I wonder if part of it is the compensation, the salary, because looking up MLS head coaching salaries from the middle of this past year, Jim Curtin was the fourth highest paid coach in all of MLS, making around $700,000. The highest paid coach was Phil Neville and Tata Martino from Portland and Inter Miami, respectively, making $1 million. So Jim Curtin was high up there, and no doubt he would have garnered that much, if not more, for his
Hmm.
services. So it wouldn't surprise me if he had been asking in that realm, and that just was, at the very least, just one possible factor that was too much. But it's also entirely likely that Lutz was down the beaten trail, so to speak, down the path of no return towards some of these coaches, where we're understanding last week offers had been made potentially to both Mellberg and to Hornland. And if you're already down that far, you've done your due diligence, your research, you're thinking about how you're building your craft, and you have an incredibly expensive guy that you really probably hadn't done much investigation because you didn't expect him to be on the market. Uh, that's a pretty quick shift that would have to occur when you're so already sold on a guy like Melberg. So that's my take on Jim Curtin, and I think the Danny Cruz thing, to me, that's one of those situations where, remember what I always say about rumors that come out. If a rumor comes out at any point in the process, player, coach, whatever, somebody has something to gain from
Right.
releasing that information. And so this could have been released from Danny Cruz's camp to try to create leverage and raise his profile, visibility. Could have been released by St. Louis City to throw everybody off the trail, thinking they're going after a second division US coach. And I don't know, there's always a reason for these things coming out, but Danny Cruz also not a finalist in the head coaching job for St. Louis City SC.
Well, the good thing is now the search is over. There is a new coach, and now he just has to get to work. Hopefully, he gets his visa soon, and he's ready for training camp.
So let's talk about that playing career and the coaching career that he brings with him. Santi, you mentioned he does have an interesting playing career. So this is our "What do we know about Olaf Mellberg so far" segment. And St. Louis City did a good job of setting the picture, staging the picture here on his playing career, where he was a center back. He had 578 career club games played, 26 goals scored, 13 assists in 50,172 minutes played. So a center back, isn't going to score that many goals, but he had a few throughout his career. Now, of those 578 games played, 232 were with Aston Villa in England, with 8 of his 26 goals scored being with Aston Villa. He also played with Juventus, Olympiacos, and Villarreal, most notably. That was his club career. His national team career has a little more flash to it. 117 national team games played with 8 goals scored for Sweden. He was the captain who appeared in 4 Euros between 2000 and 2012 and 2 World Cup appearances in 2002 and 2006. And Santi, I have to tell this story because I told you earlier that I found this and I read into it, and it's credible. Most favorite story that I've read about Olaf Mellberg so far is from 2006. There was a report in the BBC Sport Football where the Swedish coach sends Mellberg home after Olaf Mellberg and teammates Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Christian Wilhelmsson were all out past curfew, staying up until reportedly 1:15 a.m. when curfew was at 11 for the Swedish national team camp. So the big story from Olaf at that point was staying out past curfew with Zlatan, getting expelled from camp, and then being brought back later on to play in, at that point, it was the Euros, I believe. So extremely funny story about partying with Zlatan, expelled from camp in 2006. Can't wait to ask him about that one.
Do you think he will say anything?
I hope to get at least a little smirk out of it.
Yeah,
It's not every time you get to ask a coach how partying with Zlatan was.
yeah. Another fun fact. Actually, a friend, Oscar Rojas, mentioned it today. When he played in Aston Villa, he overlapped with Juan Pablo Angel, a Colombian player that also
Mhm.
had success there. So looking forward to asking him about that too.
Yes. So that's fun. But the other side of his player story is later on down his career. So that was 2006 when he was still with the national team. He had retired from national team play in 2012 after the Euros. And in 2013, Toronto FC wanted to bring on Olaf Mellberg as a player, as a defender, but the MLS League office blocked it. Don Garber was quoted at the time saying, "Our view on Melberg was that it was just not a decision that would be smart for TFC or smart for the league as a whole." Now, I took that to mean more bringing on an older defender for a high salary, and it's one of those single entity type weird things where he's doing something for what he believes the benefit of a team, because it would probably have thrown some of the monetary mechanisms into chaos for MLS, where you're setting a precedent for bringing on an aging defender at that point in 2013, paying probably designated player type value at that point. Weirdly notable to have Toronto FC try to bring him on as a player, and then now, obviously, 11 years later, coming back in as a coach with zero of those concerns about entering the league. All right, Santi, you ready to talk about his coaching career?
Let's do it.
All right, so as a coach, it's not a storied career, but it is an interesting career. And it starts in 2015 with Brahma Pajkarna, again, Brahma, Sweden's first division, Alskavensen. Man, we have been off of our game for too long, Santi. I am butchering these words. 2015 to 2017, he was the head coach for Brahma in Sweden's first division, or getting up to Sweden's first division. He took over in the third division. 2019, Fremad Amager in Denmark's first division. 19 to 20, Helsingborgs in Sweden's first division. And then the last 2 years back at Brahma in Sweden's first division. So 3 different clubs with some really interesting nuances in all of those. So let's dig into a little bit about what happened in each one of those clubs. Because if you look at his wins, draws, and losses, that's one of the narratives going on, is he has a total games coached of 147, 65 wins, 32 draws, and 50 losses. He has a plus 52 goal differential, but a 44% win percentage. So let's look at what happened in those few years, because context is key. And to understand those numbers, you really need to understand what happened at each one of these clubs. So Brahma, 2015 to 2017, he took over that club that had been relegated to Sweden's third division when he took over. He led them to back-to-back promotions and left the club after leading them back to Sweden's first division, the Allsvenskan. Not bad, right? So this is immediately as a head coach jumping in, third division in Sweden, which we're not talking about quality comparisons to MLS yet, but let's just take it for what it is at face value. You start your head coaching career in the third division of Sweden, you earn promotion, you earn a second promotion, and then you head out. So after 2017, he left, and then he rejoined the coaching ranks on the club level in July 2019, Denmark's first division Superliga with Fremad Amager. He was announced in July of that year. He left after 2 months to join Helsingborgs back in Sweden. And this stint, when you look at the 8 games that he coached, this one's weird to me because there were some things going on at this club in relation to who was actually in charge and how they wanted to structure their organization. So if you look at these 8 games and why he joined for 2 months, and is this a bad egg, and what's he doing jumping from team to team in a short period of time, what happened appears to be some weird situation of being more of a sporting director or a manager with a guy named Azrudin Valentik as the first team coach, as opposed to straight up as the coach. This is his team. He can manage it on the sidelines like he's coming into. So again, I have a difficulty reading too much into this Denmark stint in July 2019 to September 2019. Notable after this, though. So 19 to 20, we start getting into the COVID timeframe where he joins the Helsingborgs club in Sweden's first division in September 2019, and he stays there until the end of December 2020. So this encompasses the COVID period. Took over midway through the first full season. They were promoted the year before. So this is a newly promoted club. And if you're at all familiar with any European, any South American, any African club that has promotion relegation, you know that the first year after promotion is a struggle. And so that's the team he took over at Heisenberg's, led them to a 10th place finish in 2020. A pretty subpar finish in, I'm sorry, 10th place finish in 2020 is pretty subpar finish, but then he decided on his own to leave. He
Hmm.
came back to Brahma in 2023. So we've got gaps in time here. So
Yeah.
went and found himself. I'll be interested to ask him what he was doing in these gaps of time, like why they're 2017, 2019, 2020 to 2023. In 23, he returns to the club that he started coaching, Brahma, Sweden's first division, the Allsvenskan again. He was, at that time, he was also in the running to be Sweden's national team manager and reportedly turned them down. So while he hadn't had a measure of overt success yet, I think he was somewhat of a legend with Brahma in leading them back into the first division. He was in the running to be Sweden's national team manager. Now, whether or not it's legit that he turned them down, or if this was a puffing of the chest between camps or something, I'm not sure. But he was at least in negotiations to do that. With this Brahma team, now the record that he had from 2023 to this year, so basically a full season's worth of games, 34 games played, 10 wins, 20 losses, 4 draws. 50 goals scored, 60 goals allowed. That's a less than a 30% win percentage. So, what is it about this Brahma club? Is it the head coach? Is it the players? And a lot of what is being said right now from, I think you could read between the lines of the club's press release and what they touted about him, tells me that the issues are systemic with Brahma more than they are with Olaf Mellberg. Notable to me that if you look at the Allsvenskan team expenditures, you see that Brahma was less than 2 million euros in overall salary spend for this year. If you think about that, St. Louis City is above $9 million. They are fourth to last in the Allsvenskan. Average player wages for this team were around $68,000. We're talking supplemental roster minimum. We're talking homegrown player minimum, Miggy Perez type of a salary as your average salary for your team, fourth to last in that entire league. So you're seeing part of the narrative now being said about what Olaf Melberg did at Brom was overachieving, doing more with what he had than what he had any right to be doing. And I think that's what is being sold now as you have this guy who overachieved, and not just on the field, but he is known, and St. Louis City called this out in their press release. He's known for his talent development. They called out his work with the academy, and Brahma has a pretty unique academy, saying that they boast the largest academy in Europe with nearly 250 teams and 3,000 players. Uh, Melberg has a reputation for youth development. If that doesn't at least perk your ears with St. Louis City and what they've done with their academy and where our homegrown players are right now on the cusp of needing to take that next leap and continue the pipeline, that's a really intriguing proposition. But what do you make of this? Because we have a lot of really important stories to be told with all 4 of these stops that he's had in his coaching career. We haven't gotten yet to the formations that he's used, the tendencies he might have, but just the history of him so far: wins, losses, draws, the circumstances. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, so when you look at the record, it's not great, but yeah, if you look at each of those stops individually, I will the thing that I will like I value and I think is great is the back-to-back promotions. A lot of teams are promoted to second division and they stay there forever or get relegated
Mhm.
again, but making it to first division back to back, I think that's very impressive. Little bit concerned with the gaps between years in coaching, but the fact that he's big into player development and academies, I think that's something the team really needs. I have said it here on our spaces that and obviously it's a process, but at times I think maybe the team is a little bit behind. And don't get me wrong, like players like Glover and Miggy Perez had made it, but as you were saying, they need to take that next step and get more minutes. And a lot of times he's putting them in the right situations. and hopefully not only Glover or Miguel Perez or Mackay Joyner, but hopefully he will start also seeing other players and just get their feet wet with CD2 and some call-ups to the first team, get significant minutes because and obviously you have to you have this, and I hate this rule about the four call-ups and two appearances that kind
Yeah.
of limits what you can do, but hopefully he will understand that and make the best out of it for any players that he's able to bring. But I think in GR3 you need to start to give more minutes to your homegrown players and continue that part of development.
And I know they're still young, they're still in their late teens, but this thing really is could be a milestone year for guys like Caden Glover. We might get to see what we actually have in Miguel Perez at this point. Body's getting bigger, focus is getting sharper, skills getting better. I mean, the opportunity to play with MLS Next Pro in that third division and then now take the next step, I think that's there. And it really is this has to be a core of what you're looking forward to with Mellberg in the youth development, the academy experience. As the first team coach for Brahma, he was that guy who was overseeing who's ready to come up, who's fitting into his team, the opportunity to see what maybe some of the pitfalls and the pros and cons are in certain circumstances. So that's a lot of experience in the good with the bad of who's ready to come up and what they might experience and when they need time away, when they need more time up. All of those things I think he brings to the table that we're going to be looking forward to seeing. And this is coming from a St. Louis City team that, while we're not going to talk a lot of bit about players tonight, you do have to look at how our roster looks right now. And Mackay Joyner, Caden Glover are two of our four forwards. And so you're potentially looking to see some significant time for them, depending on how the formation shake out and who sees a lot of minutes game in and game out, which I think is a nice segue into the last piece that we want to discuss on what the history of Mellberg brings to City, some of his tendencies. What have the formations looked like that he's run out? What are some notable things? And there are some things to read into from what Brahma has been doing in the Swedish First Division the past couple of years. And I've got a couple of stats that we can build upon in this conversation, but it does look like he is very adaptable. He is not shy about changing significantly some of his formations. Transfermarkt lists his preferred formation as a 3-4-3, but if you look into the game-by-game blow, and especially FBref, it looks like he runs a back four over half the time in a lot of circumstances. Very much adaptable in not just a sequence of games being a back four, not just looking at a block of games, so to speak, to borrow a Carnell term, but every other game in some instances. I think there were opportunities where he's going 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 3-5-3, or 3-5-2, 3-4-3, 5-3-2, those kinds of things. And so that's exciting to see. Very much adaptable between formations and the possession metrics. In 2023, his first year with Brahma, 12 of his 30 games were below 50% possession, which is kind of the opposite of what you think of from a St. Louis City team. He used the back four in his starting lineup 22 of 30 games that season. In 2024, 19 of his 30 games were below 50% possession. So kind of the opposite, where you're now trending higher towards that lower possession, kind of pressing attack and trying to counter the ball. Back four in 2024 was used in 22 of 30 games. So the 3-4-3 is prevalent. He does use that a lot, but it also seems like it's not necessarily the absolute preferred in recent games with Brahma. Now, it might have been a one that he used previously in years past, but if you're talking recent past and what will drive, how he's learned over the years, what he's gotten to in the past few years, I think we can expect a pretty good mix of not just being stuck in a formation and trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, but adaptable to the opposition. So following tactics and say what works best against this opponent, because it seems like he's willing to build a club that is prevalent at a multitude of formations. I would expect to be ready when the season starts now for a back three to be able to be deployed, depending on if maybe those guys are in the best form or if an opponent is best against a wide attack, or a back four where you can push one or both of your fullbacks high. You can keep a back four. You can keep a back five. You could drop all five guys back if you need to, because some of these games are looking at a back five versus a back three. A lot of different variability you can offer. And St. Louis's roster is built to that extent. And again, we're not going to go into the specific players tonight because this is a coaching focused pod right now. But think of players like Giannis Horn, Jay Reed, Thomas Totlin, Celio Pompeu, Rasmus Alm can play wingback.
Yeah.
You've got options galore at your wingback positions. Just thinking offhand without going too deep into, can you fit Indiana Vassilev back there? Can Kyle Hebert play a wingback position role? I don't know. You don't want to like go too far into like reaching territory like that with Hebert, but
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you do have options out there with existing players that you can say, yeah, they could fit pretty well. So you can keep Rasmus Alm on the field if you're running a back three, use him as a right wing back in that type of a role. I mean, there are ways that you can be very creative with a lot of these formations, and that gets the brain ticking, gets a lot of exciting gears turning in what this coach could offer. Because and this might borrow from what we're getting into, but one of the knocks against Carnell, and you saw Hackworth be at times falling into this, but one of the knocks against Carnell is the lack of tactical adjustments and the lack of, I guess, really being able to find a second gear, go at him a different way, a plan B, so to speak. And judging from what Melberg has shown us, at least on paper, in the past few years that we've been looking at, that has a lot of potential to be different in 2025.
Yeah, and definitely having that plan B, plan C, being able to make in-game adjustments, it's important in MLS. And yeah, you can start with one formation depending on the opponent, but as the game develops, you may need to make changes. And St. Louis City has the personnel to change formations. But as you were saying, with the previous coaching staff, we didn't see there was a lack of having that plan B and making that change to turn a game around. So yeah, I like the fact that is uh, he is capable of using different formations and is flexible, and I think that will be great for the team and for the players that are available. And I don't know, like I don't know if I want to see Rasmus Alm as a wingback every game, but if that's what the game dictates, what the opponent dictates, why not?
Yeah. And that's one of those things that you have the option there. You don't necessarily need to go to that. Like you've got Thomas Totlin out there, but you know, if you're looking at Rasmus Holm subbing for Thomas Totlin in that role, that's speed for speed right there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some interesting opportunities that present themselves. I do need to correct myself because earlier I was talking about the record for Brahma in 2023 to 2024. I only was looking at a portion of that when I was reading. So in 2023, he led the team to a 10 win, 17 loss, 3 draw record. And in 2024, 8 wins, 11 draws, 11 losses, 10 draws. So 33 and 34 points, respectively, finishing 14th and then winning the relegation playoff in 2023 and then finishing 10th in this past season. So mediocre, but that winning the relegation playoff is a big deal. You know, that has to add into it. And going back to the story of Brahma did not invest in their club and getting more so out of the players who were on these low wages than really anybody expected them to. So had to correct myself on that one. Santi, let's talk about what City's really getting with Olaf. We talked about the manager on the rise story. We talked about earning clubs promotion, outplaying the hands as far as organization expenditure, player development. He's coming into a league that's built on parity. He's coming into a team that has bulked up their depth, not just with spending overall, but quality at the top. Now spending 2 million plus on a designated player. So do you think, based on what we've been told, what his wins and losses are, what is your opinion, I guess, at this point? Because obviously we can't say for sure at all, but with what he did, with what he had versus what he's coming into now, you can easily see more than $7 million expenditure on the roster. What does that say for what we can at least expect from him having these better tools at his disposal?
Yeah, so he did a great job with limited budget, and St. Louis has invested, and there is a good base. And if you surround the current group with a couple more players, and I have always said this, like the team needs to continue investing in players. Like if you just say, oh, this group had a good second half of the year and they competed, we think we can compete with this group. I don't think that will be okay. You need to continue investing. That's what the top teams do. They bring significant players and significant investments during both the winter and the summer window. So I hope the team is planning to do that for the January window. But a coach that makes the best out of the group he has, and we saw flashes last year with John Hackworth at the helm of what the team could do when Hartel and Seth Ritoch are connected and Simon Betcher. So hopefully it will be a continuation of that, and just the flexibility he could bring to use different formations. Maybe we will see more of Klaus and Simon Betcher in the formation playing together. So yeah, I think it's exciting, and um, is not a well-known coach to a lot of people, and I think the fans always expect huge names, somebody that maybe when you see a record you can say, okay, this guy will be a will have instant impact. But you have to also think about what Lutz has done during his career with CDSC, like
Hmm.
when he built the roster for the first year. Like I remember hearing from some colleagues, they were like, "Who is this Edward Leuven guy?" And then he has been very successful with the league. So it's the same thing. Maybe the fact that he's not a well-known coach doesn't matter. Like as an example, Cruz Azul in Mexico right now, they had a new coach for this season, and nobody was expecting a lot of him, and he finished first in the regular season, set a points record for regular season. So a lot of times he's just bringing the right guy. And if he's surrounded with good talent and makes the best out of it, that's all you need. So we have to give it time, but yeah, I think with what we know and with what he did with limited budget and his work in the academy, I think it will be a good hire.
Do you think this is a risk for St. Louis? And do you think it's kind of an experiment more so to what Lutz was saying on City Voice?
I wouldn't think of it as experiment, but yeah, you always have risk when you bring a coach with without MLS experience. But
Hmm.
at the same time, he has experience in European leagues. He had also great experience as a player. I think that's an intangible, like his leadership skills, the way he can connect with players. He captained a national team. I think that's also important. The leadership he will bring. But yeah, you always have even if you bring like a well-known manager. Let's say St. Louis have decided to extend an offer to Jim Curtin. That could be a risk too, regardless of how successful he was with Philadelphia Union. You always have
Yeah,
that risk.
that's true. And I think that's going to be the prevailing story that we hear when we start to get city previews and MLS previews for 2025. They're a ways away, but don't don't read into too much about the lack of MLS experience because those around him have MLS experience. It's the same thing with Bradley Carnell, first year head coach. Those around him, including John Hackworth, have more experience. And so the voices in his head, so to speak, the voices in his ears, the people who are advising him have all this experience. And don't forget that the style of organization that St. Louis has set up very much borrows from the German philosophy where the head coach comes in to do a specific job. It's to get the most out of the players and to implement the system on the field. And the system is not changing. The system is still high pressing, counterattack, gegen pressing, trying to earn the ball as soon as you lose it type of a thing. And you're still going to have, by and large, I would bet those low possession numbers, those mid to high lines of engagement, and you're still going to have that fairly low PPDA, the passes per defensive action. The hallmarks of St. Louis, I don't think are going anywhere. Lutz isn't one, and he commented on this multiple times. He didn't directly address it in the Mellberg statement, but he's mentioned it every single chance he's gotten up until this point, that the style of play for St. Louis is not changing. So when we don't necessarily have those advanced metrics from Sweden to say, is Mellberg a PPDA guy? Is Mellberg implementing his high press system? We're going to get a chance to find out what his experiences were when we get a chance to talk to him, whenever his media availability is, his intro press conference. But I don't think you can expect anything. You don't need to expect anything different too drastically in that regards. Yeah, he'll have different nuances to it, just like Hackworth had a different view on how he wanted to deploy that high press and the gegenpressing, and his line of engagement was a little lower than Bradley Carnell's, but the same philosophy still exists. This is still Lutz's St. Louis City team, and Mellberg is being brought in to implement those facts. So the other point is, Santi, what is Olaf Mellberg getting in coming to St. Louis City? Because this is a two-way street. And so I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least touch on this before we go. Why did we think Olaf Mellberg chose St. Louis City? There's a few different hallmarks of his career so far. One is he doesn't really stay in a place too long, year and a half or so. He doesn't get outside of Sweden much. So this is his first big foray, especially if he's on a multi-year contract. And what he said what I noted at the very beginning of the pod, he noted the opportunity, the infrastructure, the direction of the organization, building upon the foundation, and the massive fan support. Those are some interesting pillars to note. Most notably, the amazing infrastructure and direction of the organization. To me, he's identified this team that, if I'm reading between the lines, and especially if I put on my blinders for a second and try to be objective about this, it sounds like he's saying this is an organization that's willing to spend and put their players and their staff in a good position with the highest state-of-the-art equipment, technology, and the investment that he believes is there. And so that is markedly different from what he had in Sweden. This is probably, he views that as the opportunity just as much as to come to America and have success in MLS. So if we're being honest here, I would have to say I'm looking from his perspective to further his coaching career, take that next step to the next level of competition, which I would argue that MLS, especially if you look at Football League rankings, better division top to bottom than the Allsvenskan in Sweden. I think it's ranked higher. MLS is ranked higher than that division by about 18 spots. Mm-hmm. And so the parity I mentioned in MLS is there. Higher quality league top to bottom. And because of the salary cap situations, the roster rules, you're not going to have a team that is markedly top to bottom different than any other. It's those few DPs that make the difference. And St. Louis is now at least trying to get on somewhat of a level playing field with some teams in that regard. And so I think he views this as long-term for him, probably a stepping stone. If he succeeds here in MLS for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, then he'll play himself and coach himself into a position for a top 5 league potentially. His path might not be that different from a player that we've talked about succeeding in MLS and then being sold off. If we're looking long-term in the future, that's what I'm talking about. 4 or 5 years, that could be the potential game plan, but it starts here. And I think he's looking at this as, I'm being given the tools I need to succeed in a league that he probably notes could benefit his style.
Yeah, for sure. And just the fact that MLS has a higher level, and yeah, we have seen it on rankings. I haven't even had a chance to ask players like Rasmus Alm, Thomas Totland, and
Yep.
yeah, obviously they're here now, but they said, yeah, when you compare the level of play, is definitely higher. So yeah, it could be a good opportunity for him. I hope he also saw something he liked in the academy structure, and
Yes.
and the players that have signed as homegrowns, because that will be big too, especially if he has a reputation for that. Just continuing building the team and developing players, and bringing them to that next level. I hope he saw something he liked in there too.
Most all of his success or time spent and the reputation that he's built has been with the one club, Brahma, in Sweden. And so if you're able to take those talents, and this is a test just as much for St. Louis as it is for him, if you're able to take those reputations and talents and do it in a wholly different league, with different nuances, roster rules, different academy structures, I think that helps to build your resume for those next steps. You cement yourself as that reputation of building the youth, building the academy, and developing to the first team. This is a real opportunity for him, and it will be very exciting to see if he actually how well he succeeds when he gets started. Because the tools, unlike 2023, in a lot of ways, we've got proven examples of what we can expect based on the end of 2024 from the key players. And we also have a lot of expectations for some of those guys waiting in the wings, because over the past month or so, we've gotten notes of academy players making national team camps. The pipeline is pretty clear in top players at each level of the academy starting to separate themselves. And so you're looking for him to continue that path to the first team. He has a little bit of a narrow scope in that, probably as first team coach, compared to what Hackworth as technical director and Lutz as sporting director. But when it comes to those guys being ready for the first team and then succeeding when they get there, that's, I think, what he really has an opportunity to put his hands on, is giving the kids a chance to succeed once they get to that first team.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about seeing what he can do with that talent. And yeah, now we have some news, and we have the expansion draft coming up in the next few weeks. And when you like, it will go quickly. Then you have the holidays, and then players report to camp. So it's gonna come quickly.
That's right. I think that about wraps it up for what we have. Santi, any last words on Olaf Mellberg as we're still digesting this information? And we have a lot more that we'll be talking about, whether it's on the other side of Thanksgiving, the other side of Christmas, but tons more on Olaf once we actually get a chance to talk to him and hear more from him. Anything else for now?
No, no, just official welcome for Olaf. Bienvenido, and looking forward to seeing what he can do for St. Louis City.
100%. Welcome to St. Louis City. Welcome to St. Louis, Olaf Mellberg. From all of us here on Flyover Footy, we hope you have a successful first season, second season, however long you're with us. And we can't wait to see what mark you leave on the players that we've come to know and love. That's it for us on Flyover Footy for this special edition. Olaf Mellberg, new St. Louis City SC head coach. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. We will be back with you on the other side of the holiday, looking ahead to the expansion draft and all of the offseason activities. For now, have a safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday, and have fun out there.
Vamos City!
All right. Good work, Santi.
I thought this was gonna be a short one.
We always say that.
I know.
I was like,
but all good.
I probably could have done this myself in about 30 minutes, but probably not. As soon as you were like, I'm in, I was like, oh, then we're going full show. This is
Yeah, no, this was great. I missed it. It had been a while, and I missed doing a pod with you. So this was great.
I felt like I had to shake some rust off there a little bit.
Yeah, me too. I was struggling a little bit.
That's the
To be
one
honest.
pitfall of like I set ourselves up with like content at the end of the season, like a pre-recorded, or I did a recorded pod without video and stuff, not live stream. But it definitely is like it's like riding a bike after a while, but
Right.
it takes a little bit to get back into it. So thanks for sticking around with us, everybody. This was super fun, and thanks for the chat. That was we read it during the live stream, even if we don't directly address it. Like I see every single one of these comments. It does shift the conversation a little bit at times. Like for instance, Aaron Leake had mentioned at one point in the chat, I assume he's good with high press and counter, talked about formation. How much will we see a change in on-field play? So I didn't actually have that directly addressed in my notes, but thank you so much for bringing that up, because it allowed us to include that. I love that you guys are active in the chat and let us pivot when we need to, because real-time feedback, right? If somebody's thinking about it and wondering it, I'm sure others listening who aren't joining us for the live stream have that same thing too. Super exciting for us.
All right.
That'll do it, Santi. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream. Thanks for sticking around with us. Have a good holiday. And like I said, I expected it either Monday or Tuesday of this week or next week, because they're not going to announce anything during the holiday. So I think the next big news is probably going to be Timo Baumgartel, if that comes to fruition. We haven't heard any rumors lately on that. They were negotiating and things were trending in the right direction. And he plays center back, which we know is a position that City's targeting. So
That'd be great to finish the year.
wouldn't that be nice to get that in before sometime between now and Christmas, because it's not like they're going to say, all right, it's mid-December, we're not going to announce anything more. But um, I would feel better about going to the expansion draft with an extra center back. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
One of them at least is going to be on the chopping block, and
Yeah.
to have that extra one would be nice. And if we sign Baumgartel, he's not going to be eligible for the expansion draft because this is based on 2024.
Oh,
He
okay.
won't actually be rostered and signed for us
Right.
until January 2025. So, little nugget there. Whoever, if we sign a player for next year in the next few weeks, they're not going to be.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it for the expansion draft. Not eligible.
All right.
On that note, we'll call.